thank our sponsors this year. We got Argus Self Storage, Green Steel Buildings, U-Haul, Watertight Roofing. Your support keeps us going. Thank you very much. And on that note, I'm going to hand this over to Steve Lucas, who's partnered with us through the storage group and providing this webinar. Thank you, Steve.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Glad to be here. Glad to help support the associations. You guys all need a lot of help during this time. The COVID thing has been pretty difficult for associations in general across all boards. I know I'm a member of a couple chambers of commerce, and they're also having a hard go at it. So we're glad to be here and to support you guys. Just real quick, I'm the CEO of the storage group. We have an online rental move-in product called Click and Store. Pretty robust online move-in tool. And yeah, we're into internet marketing and everything self-storage. So there you go.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for your help in getting this going. Now let's move on over to our panel. I want to introduce our panel members here. We got Larry Goldman with Argus Self-Storage Advisors, Brian Bird with Landvest, Tron Jorgheim with Store Here, and Steve Lucas with the Storage Group. Now, after hearing what the Burnhams had to say, do you guys agree, disagree? Do you have any input? Do you have anything you want to support that they said in terms of, I guess, the way things are going right now during COVID, how there seems to be stabilization in this kind of quarter versus the last quarter? What are you guys thinking?
Yeah, so I'll jump in real quick. Just a couple things I'd like to just touch on that they brought up is, first of all, the section on reviews, really important. But one thing that we tell all our clients, and I mean, in general, you know this yourselves as you all shop, when you're looking for reviews, you want to see some bad ones. You want to see some bad ones because it gives validity to the reviews that are online. And the best part about the bad ones is having a good positive response in a timely manner, taking it offline. So great reviews are great, but when people see only great reviews, they know something's amiss. So you want to make sure you take care of that. And then, yeah, as far as the contact list thing, this has been, the pandemic has just driven numbers through the roof. We're seeing almost 180% increase in online move-in and rental activity year over year at this current point. So people are definitely moving to websites and to e-commerce.
Any other input?
I found that interesting, his comments on new facilities, multi-story facilities, or the impact they have on single-story facilities, because it seemed like maybe Little Rock, Arkansas was a little ahead of the development cycle in Kansas City and then Wichita, because we saw a super ritzy multi-story facility built in an area that had conventional storage facilities. Ironically, they're the ones that are building the 3,000, the three-story facilities, or a couple of them that are competing with our facility in Kansas City. So it was interesting hearing that I feel it's a little different customer on the single-story facilities. The customers that are candidates to go multi-story, and I'll be real interested in what Brian Bird has to say about this. I think we probably lost those years ago. I think the contractors and businesses that want immediate access to their supplies and tools and stuff, I think they're going to be leasing from single-story facilities. They're not going to want to take elevators and stuff.
Well, I'll come back around to that because obviously we've got a lot of experience with that. But going to Google, I agree with what the Burnhams were talking about with the trend. With searches, they were up tremendously, and then they started to back down for us late September and into mid-October. One thing to keep in mind, though, our Google reps, we've been advertising with Google for every bit of probably 15 years. They are going to be increasing the cost per click in the self-storage sector specifically. So that's something that came up. So although the searches may be coming down, the word on the street is that our cost per clicks will go up. You can control that with managing your keywords and your content. The other thing, Google My Business, I still have a strong opinion that will start to really hamper websites in the future, because if you're really monetizing and working your GMB listing appropriately, a customer doesn't have to come off that GMB listing to even go to your web page. Everything should be there. And if you haven't acquired it, claimed your listing, reach out to me. I'll show you how to do it. It's real free, or it's free. It's really easy to do. Would love to help you out, especially with the industry. That should be a benefit to our operators in Kansas that are paid members. But if you have not claimed your GMB listing, you're way behind, and you don't want a competitor to do that. With regard to multi-story, our first multi-story facility that we did was in 2008. We partnered up, or I'm sorry, we built directly on a property line of an all traditional storage facility. The facility that we built was 5 stories. I will give you the caveat of that it's in Atlanta, Georgia. We came out of the gates and we really caused some problems because here's the unique thing about a multi-story. I don't think multi-story is something that would do well in Wichita. It's just because folks aren't accustomed to navigating elevators like they are in Houston, Dallas, Chicago, and whatnot. But we were able to price our 5th floor units at a very low rate, which got people into the door. And what every storage manager across the country will say is, if you get them in front of me, I can close the deal. So that gave us a huge competitive advantage to have pricing on that 5th floor. What was interesting is people weren't renting on the 5th floor. They were able, they chose a ground level, but again, our job was to get them in the door. That particular project is a little unique in itself. The main floor, which you would drive up to, that's actually floor 3, but you can enter on floor 2 and floor 1. So we actually promoted as 3 of our floors as all ground level. So I think it's all in your manager. I think you can sell anything you want. I do think that multi-level is not for your traditional contractors, your landscapers, and your construction, but there are a lot of other customers out there that can appreciate that type of storage.
Hey, Brian, you're on mute.
Yeah, I was on mute there. Sorry. So are we seeing reduced rents, increased rents, rent deferment? What's going on with rents right now? I think last quarter there was a little bit more deferments going on or reduced rents.
We're back to business as usual, and we've been pushing rent increases as well. We started ours in June. We started back at seizing units in June as well. So it's business as usual for us, and obviously we're getting some upticks in COVID. We're getting hit pretty hard in San Antonio, Texas right now.
What are you guys using for like management reports and focusing to gauge, demand, supply, pricing? What are you using for the next 6 months to really see what's going on?
I'll let somebody jump in. Obviously, we've had a full-time pricing person for since 2003, and then we partnered up with another group. So we've kind of got a proprietary approach, but we're still pushing.
Yeah, hey, this is Tron, and I wanted to go back to contactless for a minute.
Sure, yeah.
So I think what we're seeing is a huge shift toward contactless renting. Seeing a big split between the people that contactless plus frictionless. There's still a lot of folks who have a lot of friction in their contactless process. And the folks who make it really easy to use the contactless process, they have the huge advantage. So I would agree with anyone who says that this is still a real estate business and location matters, but it's also very much a customer service business and no friction matters. A lot of us, especially in some of the smaller markets, have been running with very small numbers of labor hours or no people at the sites for a long time. But the folks who make it really easy to rent, they're going to get the advantage. And their advantage is not just going to be in occupancy, but their advantage is going to be in being able to manage rental rates and increases and that sort of thing. So I would just encourage everyone to look at your processes and remove as much friction as you can. Now, in some markets, all of your competitors have worse friction than you do. And even if you have friction, you don't have to worry about it because you have the least friction, right? So you always have to weigh that against your competitors. But that is the key, I think, in moving forward. Contactless is here to stay. And now the question is, how much friction can you remove?
And I agree with you, Tron. Good to see you, by the way.
What's up, buddy?
Yeah, so some of the things that I think are important to consider, and I've got a couple items to cover here, but first of all, with contactless, moving towards, there's a ton of online rental tools, right? We've transformed our online rental tool to an e-commerce platform for the mere fact that people are used to dealing with e-commerce. They buy from Amazon, they're buying from Best Buy, they're buying Instacart for their deliveries for food, Drizzly for their beer. I mean, everything has gone to an e-commerce platform. And so people are trained and they know how to use that platform. So if you're delivering something that's in similar user experience, they're going to make that, what Tron just said, that's frictionless. They already understand how to use it. They understand the flow. They understand when they're supposed to check out. They understand that there's a cart up in the right-hand corner that they can look at and see what they've placed in the cart. And that's exactly what we've done with Click and Store. The second part of that is, what about the people that leave? Not everybody rents. People get called away from the rental. Phone rings, something happens. They get a direct message from Hangouts or Zoom and they leave, right? Well, does your online rental tool on your website remember that transaction? So when they come back, is it already there? Have they already put the unit up in the cart? Is it there still, or did it disappear and they got to start from scratch? That's something we've done several years ago, is to make sure that cart stays there. The other part of that is when they abandon, what happens? Do you know they abandoned? Do you know who abandoned? Are you able to deliver to that, collect that contact right up front, that email, that phone number? Can you call them? Are you able to send them a solicitation with a coupon? Hey, come on back. We see your cart's abandoned. We'll give you 10% off to move in today. That's the technology we use because that's what people are accustomed to. And then real quick, with regard to what Brian was talking about with regard to pricing, another big piece of your marketing and the company you're working with is what kind of data are they providing you? So in our dashboard, we're providing the census data for the area, but we're also we're scraping and providing prices. We're providing real-time scrape prices from your competitors. And, as we heard earlier, is the price going up? Is the price going down? What do you need to do? You can see all of that in real time. And that's an important pulse on the marketplace. So just a few things that I think, everybody should be considering and looking at.
Yeah. If I could jump back in, one of the other major factors that has really changed since COVID is what's happening with your employees. Now, whether you have employees who just come by to check locks and do maintenance, or whether you have employees in the stores, COVID has affected people's personal lives so dramatically that a lot of people are just not able to do the kind of work and do the kind of performance they were able to do. So that's where you can use your technology, your frictionless web tools and so on to support your staff, because they're not going to be able to be there as much as they were. They certainly don't have their heads in the game as much as they did at some point. So that's a big factor, is how do you help your people through all this? Because at this point, everyone has an acquaintance who has either died or gotten very sick from COVID, and people's psyches are fragile. So on the one hand, you have to be very deliberate about how you help your employees through this. but that's also a reason why you want your systems to be totally frictionless, because people are under so much stress. If you throw up one little roadblock to them, they're going to throw up their hands and walk away. So that would be the other thing I'd kind of throw out there to think about.
Absolutely. Yeah, good technology can help you prevent a lot of this situation. Now, what happens with, are there any protocols set for when a manager or a staff member needs to be quarantined? Has anyone heard of anything like that?
Yeah, so the people that I talk with are generally handling this on a case-by-case basis. And they are prepared at any time to close a store for a day or a week or a month and have their technology and their call center and relief managers pick up whatever slack has to be picked up to maintain the site or do whatever has to be done. So I think that's important too, to be prepared for that type of thing.
I think too, our support team has been taking calls on some of these COVID issues where facilities, stores are closing, but they're not properly notifying their renters. They're not properly giving them access to their units. And some people have called us. They can't get a hold of the store or the store manager. They've got stuff that they've got to access, whether it's healthcare items, whether it's businesses that are trying to get additional inventory from storage, and they're closed. They're not answering the phone. There's nobody there. So I highly encourage to making sure that what Tron just said, you got some type of succession plan in place.
Brian Bird, are your
That's
offices,
where,
go ahead.
sorry, I was going to say, and that's where the call center that people are using is so important, because the call center reps are always there to handle things. And I suppose one of the things that our call center here work from home works very well in this situation. Operations for any of the isolations or lockdowns that were happening, but we were able to be there to support all of our clients as things happened with them, where we could pick up the slack by handling the calls and taking care of the customers for them. So having a way to have a backup to your backup is also important.
I was
Well,
going
a
to
lot
ask Brian Bird if you're keeping normal hours, like pre-COVID hours. I don't know. I
business as
assume you rent
usual.
trucks at some of your locations.
Business as usual. We don't rent, well, that's not true. We have a lot of free trucks at our locations. Now, during the height of COVID from about mid-March until May 31st, we didn't let any of the free trucks go out at all. We just felt like that might have put our managers in a position for more exposure than was really necessary for a free amenity. But business hours have not changed. It's still business as usual. And in fact, our managers, they really appreciate being in an essential category. Now, they were a little upset when everyone was getting an extra $600 of unemployment. That's a whole nother issue. We did do some incentives for our managers for different move-ins and different incentives just to kind of keep their head in the game while everything was going on. Installed sneeze guards and hand sanitizer. And, our first round of hand sanitizer, I think we paid $4,000 a gallon for. It just felt like, no, I'm being facetious. So, but we overpaid just to get enough hand sanitizer in our stores to give our employees peace of mind. But it's been business as usual all across the market where we're at. Again, we're getting hit a little hard in San Antonio right now, but I think everyone's getting used to this new norm. We did shut it down to just one customer in the office at a time, though, and that has not negatively impacted business.
Are you set up with contactless payments and rentals as well, or just?
You can rent online with us. You can pay online. You can do auto pay, which we push auto pay like nobody's business at move-in. But we are not a true contactless. We're not a huge fan of people moving in to our properties without us physically seeing them and seeing that ID. we've had people try to move in online with bogus IDs, and we've caught them already. So that would just lead to some nefarious activity and not having accurate tenant information, in our opinion.
Yeah, and to that point, we've always had ID verification in the background running as somebody's filling out the form. But here within the next 2 weeks or so, we are going to have biometric ID verification. So basically what happens is somebody, and you've probably done this before, you take a picture or you scan the front of your license, the back of your license, and you take a selfie. And it's sent to a database that takes the biometric readings, does the algorithms, and will send back whether or not that person is that person.
That's
and
very
it's almost 99.9% accurate. So
that's cool.
Yeah, big stuff needed.
Yeah.
To any of the attendees, if you have any questions, feel free to ask a question in the Q&A box in the bottom. I have one more here on, well, seems like we're all adapting pretty well to the environment. Has optimism changed at all for the next year? What are you guys thinking or seeing?
A second wave's different. I think the economy was propped up by a lot of the stimulus. I don't think we really, in my opinion, I'm not speaking for any of the other folks on the panel, but in my opinion, I think we are propped up. And if we have a second wave, like we did that first time around, we might get scraped up a little bit. So it's going to be interesting how that works out. I think everyone's occupancies are high, probably higher than we really wanted them to be, because we had that a couple of month period that we weren't pushing rent increases through. I hope that it doesn't have the impact that it did the first time with all of the shutdowns. But I think we might get scraped up a little bit more this time because we're not being propped up in the same manner financially with some of the industries that did with the unemployment and the stimulus checks.
Yeah,
I think those are really good cautions for sure. But I feel much better about going into a second wave from business sense. I feel horrible on a personal sense, but from business sense, I feel much better going into the second wave because all of us have made so many adaptations in our operations and fine-tuned our contactless business and how we manage employees that I think we will handle a second and third and fourth or how many ever waves we're going to get on the business side well. I think some things will depend on what happens in our local markets, but a lot of the upheaval that will likely come will cause the need for self-storage. We may see things that we've seen in other downturns where delinquencies are up or rental rates get flat, although we are seeing rental rates starting to recover in lots of places now. So on the business side, I think unless, we all collectively push our, car off the cliff, I think we'll be okay business-wise.
Yeah, I think operationally, we've got it figured out. I think I'm just concerned about the financial impact on our consumers.
Yeah, that's the same thing. Talking to our larger clients, they're saying the same thing. They're concerned about their client and the financial sustainability of their environment. And the stimulus certainly kept them powered. A lot of people, unfortunately, are making more on unemployment than they were making when they were actually working. So all of that, is a little bit of a falsehood with the economy. And I think that's the thing that bothers me a little bit is when do the delinquencies start and, how bad does that hit? Are you able to develop a good method of bringing in new revenue or new clients to offset that churn? That's really where I think the business model and business mind should be right now, is thinking of those things and making any other changes. Because operationally, you probably did all that stuff online, you probably did all that stuff, but get ready for what happens if. And I don't know if enough people are thinking in that manner. Hopefully they are, because I too think, I don't think it's going to be devastating, but I think it's going to be there. And I think Primary markets, we see some volatility already in primary markets from the mere fact that people are moving out of the cities. They want to move to someplace they feel safer, it's quieter, they're away from some of that bad activity that's happening in cities. So what does that mean to the businesses and to our industry? And I think some of that will play out as well.
I think we're still pretty darn fortunate. We're in a great industry for COVID. I mean, obviously, hospitality and even apartments are taking a beating. We keep a pretty close pulse on the apartment communities, and they're starting to feel the impact because the moratorium on evictions in many states went through. So they were having to evict folks, but not getting the influx of customers back in because so many people without jobs, living with family or friends, and they're in that influx. Well, do I still stay in New York City or do I move out to Connecticut? Do I stay in Kansas City or do I move to DeSoto? Yeah, so there's a lot of things moving, but man, I'm sure glad we're in storage right now.
I'm optimistic on 2021. I also feel that the Kansas cities are not high density. I think the urban cores of Wichita and Kansas City and maybe even St. Louis aren't going to suffer as much just because we lack the density of Chicago, Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, those kind of cities that we're already starting to see some negative momentum before the crisis began. But I think the industry, for the most part, my circle, we're all pleasantly surprised that delinquencies were as low as they were this year. Hopefully they continue in 2021, but it's been a little bit of a wild card because collections have been so much better than anyone would have anticipated with all the unemployment. From a valuation perspective, my world is kind of driven by the spread between the cost of capital and cap rates. So we think values, all things being equal, and they very seldom are all things being equal when you're comparing two storage properties, that they all have their unique nuances. I think valuations have probably gone up. I think values have gone up recently as interest rates have plummeted, and the fundamentals are strong. And competing in property types, office and retail is looking pretty gloomy.
Yeah.
I have a question here from an attendee about what is the average rental rate for different sizes of units? Right off the bat, I want to say it kind of varies with the local market. What do you guys think? Yeah. 100%.
Market, supply, demand. In some areas you can get 50% more on climate control. Someplace you don't have that gap. There's so many variables in that question to give an accurate answer.
Okay. Well, thank you
Yeah,
very
it becomes trial and error. You have to just see what you can do.
Okay, well, thank you very much to our panelists. It was very great answers. I loved it. I think our members are very happy with our whole discussion here. Next, we're going to move over to Stan Matt.